Alright, so today we are going to draw lips or the mouth. And I'm going to do the first layer in blue like before, and that's going to be my guideline or my template for the basic shapes. So I'm going to start with a horizontal line that'll give me the width of the mouth and a little dot on each end. Now the mouth is made up of 5 parts. And I call them pillows. Obviously that's not the anatomical name, but there's 5 sections to it, and the middle one is kind of a rounded heart shape. And then on each side of it is another pillow. And remember, this is just a blueprint of what the lips will look like. So 3 on top and then 2 on the bottom. Now I'll hide this layer later on when I finish this off. Okay, so there's the width of the lips, the height, and these pillows will help give me where the shapes will be, where I'll shade it. Okay, so now the second layer of black, and I'm just going to outline and kind of smooth out, round these shapes off just a little bit, just to give my mouth a little bit more realistic shape. Now the bottom lip has a straight or even a convex or concave arch to it. Okay, and that's where my center line was. Alright, so now I'll go back and I'll hide the blue. Well, maybe I'll leave it there for a few minutes. I'm going to add another layer, the third layer, and the third layer is also going to be in black, and this is where I'm going to start shading or do my values. So this is all the heavy lines we're going to do. The rest of the mouth is just going to be shading and using halftones and highlights and core shadows and stuff. Right, so the corner of the mouth has, under the skin is a little muscle that's kind of bean shaped. It would look about like that. And that's where the lips come together, and it's kind of a pinch right there, the corners of your mouth. So I'm going to establish those already. And these will be fairly dark since they're recessed, not a lot of light is getting in there. And I'm using this to hopefully put my lips in kind of a curve. They're not flat against the skull, obviously, that they're rounded. All right, so my light source, like usual, is going to be in my top left hand corner. If I had a lamp right there, it'd be shining this way. When I did the nose, I had a cast shadow going from the left to the right, and my lips will be the same. So I'll have a slight, not slight, but a little bit of a cast shadow underneath that bottom lip, and I'm just going to rough it in. I'll smooth it out later, but I want to establish some values, what's lightest and what's darkest in my picture. So remember, the cast shadow, any cast shadow, is always darkest closest to the object, and then with ambient light and reflected light, it gets a little lighter the farther away it gets. So that is my cast shadow under my lip. Okay. I'm going to go back and I'm going to add, or I'm going to start filling in the shading on the lip. So the light won't curl around the lip. So this, where the two lips meet together, I'm just going to refer to as the crease. And that's going to be fairly dark because no light is getting in there unless we had light from the bottom, which we don't. on this drawing. I'm going to let it dip around just barely right there in the center. And I'm doing this pretty quickly just for the demonstration. If I was doing this as an assignment, I could easily spend an hour getting this to look the best that I can. Now, my right side of the lips are going to be a little bit darker because we're farther away from the light source. I'm going to start to shade in. I'm going to lose this blue lines now. I don't need those again. I'm going to start to shade in the top of the lip. No, the lip curves right here in the middle. That's where I'm going to have most of my lightest values and some highlights. And I'm just doing this in layers or in sections at a time. Some shading on the bottom lip. Remember, I'm doing this much rougher than I would if this was going to be a finished assignment. Okay, so now let me hide the lines and let's see where we're at. So we're getting closer. I'm going to turn my lines back on just to make sure that I'm coloring in place, not coloring outside the lines. And I'm going to build up the values even more. A little bit darker on this. I'm going to add just a little bit more of a curve to that. And I'm going to come back and darken in my cast shadow. As I adjust one value, it seems like I need to put an adjustment in all the values. And I'm going to work on these nodes just a little bit more. I'm going to spread out the shading a little bit. So I'm not doing just the lips, but I'm also doing the surrounding area to kind of put the lips in context of where they are in relationship to everything else. So I'm also going to add this, I think it's called the Philtrum, that little dip between your nose and your lips. So the way that the light's shining, this side will be the lightest, the left side will be the darkest. I might have to come back with an eraser and lighten some of this up. Now I'm not going to do the cast shadow from the nose. It would look funny if I had just a half a nose in here, but that would, right here would be where the bottom, the septum part of the nose is. I'm just going to very lightly. So remember, when it comes to shading, you can either use a lighter touch on your pen or you can change the opacity. Either one is fine, whatever you're most comfortable with. Okay, now I'm going to come back and I'm going to put a mid-value halftone on the top lip and the bottom lip. I'll erase out some highlights in a minute, but it should all the lips should have somewhat of at least a halftone, if not a little bit darker. I'm going to define this crease a little bit more. The very center part of that crease is obviously going to be pretty dark because there's no light getting to it. The corners of the mouth are a little bit darker because that's where the pinch is. Okay, Then I'm going to draw some light cross contour lines. It seems that our lips, you can see these lines faintly. And the cross contour is going to help to define the curve. Not too much. I'll cover some of these up. I don't want it to look like old cracked lips. And I'm going to adjust my value at the bottom. Bring this shading up just a little bit. Hide. I'm not sure if I have. Yeah, hide that line. Now now my mouth is pretty much just value changes. I'm going to straighten up some of these edges. I like soft edges, but every now and then we have to put a hard edge in so that we can separate the planes or separate the values. Okay, so I'm going to pause and look at my picture and see where do I need more value, less value? Where do I need some highlights? So the lips are moist, so the reflected light or the highlights are going to be the brightest part of the entire face. The highlight on the lips will be brighter than, say, the highlight on the cheekbone. And another thing I need to watch out for is that my shading or my values on the lips aren't darker than the value of my shadows, or I will get confused and I won't know what's a dark value of a lip and what part is a shadow. So remember, the darkest part of your highlights can't be darker than the lightest part of your shadows. Okay. So now I want to erase out or white out some highlights, and so you can either use your eraser or your white pencil. I'm going to switch mine to white, and I'm going to put a little bit of a highlight here, little bit highlight on both sides. And then one trick to making highlights stand out, obviously, is to make the area surrounding the highlight darker. So I'm going to switch back to my black. And I'm just lightly going to outline that highlight, make a darker value around it. That will make my highlight stand out a little bit more. Okay, I think I need to darken this up also. Kind of accentuate that curved part. Darken up around this highlight just a little bit more. Smooth out my cast shadow. I don't mind seeing pencil lines. Gives it kind of a painterly effect. Go over just a little bit more and add just a few more dark values. going to erase just a little bit or white out just a little bit more highlight right there. I don't want that to be too dark. Okay, so I think there we have, or there I have some lips. Remember, if this was a full assignment, I would make everywhere that I've shaded a little smoother. I'd spend more time there, maybe a little darker darks and lighter lights. But I would enlarge this and clean it up a little bit. Nice thing about these iPads is you can shrink things down and enlarge things to work on specific areas. But that's the mouth. Thank you.